Hi, everybody. So here we are. This is the second lecture. Last time we covered Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Dan Pink really focusing on motivation. Today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence, personality, Lingo, the book, and listening. Those three things together are going to go a long way. So before we really get in, I want to just cover a few things here. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate the reflections that you all shared in your first assignment. One of the most important parts about teaching a class like this is getting to hear what brings each person to the table, not just professionally, but personally. And in a small group like this, we're already seeing a wide range of perspectives. We've got project management in construction to field work. We have, out of just the 5 people, we've got design roles, academic leadership, regulatory environments. These are all places in which you work. But there is a unifying thread in your responses, and that is a shared desire to improve the human experience in construction. Some of you are looking to strengthen leadership skills through emotional awareness and empathy. Others are confronting some pretty tough industry challenges in real life and want to be part of the solution. All of you are ready to explore mental health, not as a side topic, but as an essential factor in performance, culture, and sustainability. So that's exactly the right mindset for this course, and that's what it was designed for. So I thought it would be interesting to see kind of common threads in the course expectations. So there was a common thread with a desire to lead with empathy, addressing industry-wide mental health gaps. Conversations like this, courses like this, books, articles, you name it, workshops, the more we talk about it, the more it becomes something that we can address. So I'm really glad to see that we're all together on that. Making sense of stress on job sites, that was another common thread in expectations. A shift in values, like paying attention to kind of things are changing and what's important to people now don't necessarily reflect what used to be important 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Although I will say at the core, for the most part, that things don't change that much. It's not really the why we do things that change. It's kind of the how we do things and what we do that changes over time. But the why is pretty consistent. And no, I don't have data to back that up. That's just my Lauraism. And then taking personal responsibility and making an impact. So those were the themes of expectations throughout. The other thing I wanted to do was to take some time and look at the results from your personality tests, because taking a test just to take a test is especially personality tests, I always kind of call them like fun, like horoscopes. And it's not until you actually kind of use them and understand what's going on and then put them into context that they become a tool. So let's have a look at this. So first of all, you can see that we had in our first, so like our primaries, we had 2 connectors and we had 2 movers. We had 1 primary planner and 0 primary thinkers. Then in the seconds, 2 of you had a second result, and your secondary was 2 of you were connectors, 2 of you were planners, 1 was a thinker, and then no one was a mover as a secondary. Then we get into the tertiary and the quaternary, if I'm pronouncing that correct. So these are the results, but what do they mean? So when you're looking at the results of this particular personality test, this profile, the primary color and the primary piece, whether it was connector, planner, thinker, or mover, indicates the characteristics that you feel most comfortable operating in. These are the ones that you are your most natural self. They're the ones that kind of happen automatically. This is your first filter. It's not your only filter, it's your first filter. Then the secondary color. So what does your secondary color mean? And the secondary color has a major influence on the first. And pretty much when you look at the two of them together, they're kind of sometimes indistinguishable from each other. You might, in a professional environment, operate in one over the other. I found this to be very true. So my color profile is my primary and secondary are blue and green. Oh, I'm sorry. When I have been studying this was on the original edition of this book, and they use colors all the time. So I apologize if my vernacular changes. So connector, mine is primarily a connector and then secondary a thinker. But when I was working in Manhattan, I noticed that my test results, because I've done this test a whole bunch of times, my test results were very much in the thinker universe. There was like that level of cadence really brought out the thinker sides of my personality style, blend, rainbow, however you want to call it. And then it wasn't until we moved from Manhattan and came to Orlando because of wanting to be closer to my own core family. I was commuting so much, I was never home. And when I was taking the test again, then the connector parts came out more. So as I kind of reflected on that, I thought about, well, why is there a difference? And I think the difference really comes from what you need to survive and be successful in each situation will kind of highlight or emphasize one over the other. So depending on how much of a difference you had between your primary traits versus your secondary traits, you might see more or less of a shift in those things. Now, there is an interesting little factoid that's buried in the book. It's like 1 or 2 sentences, I think, in the book. And that's talking about how introverts will think in their primary personality style, but they will mostly act in their secondary personality style. So figuring out which one you want to approach first when you're dealing with an introvert can get a little sticky sometimes. It's just a matter of paying attention. So then the next natural question to that is, well, how do I pick out an introvert? And most people will say, oh, it's the quiet one in the room, or, oh, the extrovert is the one that's all over the place and is a social butterfly and all of that. Well, it turns out that that's actually not the best way of figuring out if somebody is an introvert or an extrovert, unless you know them really well. The best way to figure out if someone is an introvert or an extrovert is to pay attention to how they recharge, so that get their energy, rest. So extroverts get a lot of energy from being in a crowd. They like to be around people. They are charged up, fired up. They're the ones that can have a very comfortable conversation with a group of people. Introverts, on the other hand, they're a little different. They can be just as loud and in your face as an extrovert, but they get their energy from being alone. So they recover by being alone. These are typically the people that will go and find a very quiet place to read. Extroverts still love to read, but they might read in a louder place. Introverts are going to go, you're going to find them spending more time alone in their rooms, watching TV, because they recharge their energy on their own. And introverts can public speak with the best of them. Introverts can interact. They can manage a crowd. They can do all of the same things that extroverts do, but they recharge quietly. So those are kind of little things to look for when you're trying to figure out. Introverts, and if you're in a team setting and you think you're dealing with an introvert, it's not it might make them uncomfortable if you call them out by name or you make them stand up to speak. When I'm doing workshops, I always ask, okay, all the extroverts in the room, stand up. And they'll stand up. They'll stand up pretty quickly. And then that leaves the introvert sitting down. And then I ask the group, I say, well, why did I ask the extroverts to stand up? And the answer is because if I made the introverts stand up, it could have made them very uncomfortable. Extroverts are fine standing up, but introverts would rather sit down. So those are just little things to pay attention to. And the point there is that we're going to get into a lot of picking out personality styles based on behaviors, and this introvert extrovert thing does come up. And so the key part to know there is that an introvert will think in their primary traits, but they will behave in their secondary traits. So they're a little sneaky that way. Okay, the third color, the third main color in your blend, it's really kind of hard to recognize because it gets overshadowed by your primary and your secondary. So there's not too much interesting stuff to say about that one, but I think that the fourth is very interesting. And so whatever your smallest trait was, whether it was connector or planner or thinker or mover, it turns out that this characteristic is something that you understand the least but appreciate the most out of others. And at the same time, those are the traits that you will find yourself complaining about in someone else. Like, they're always talking, they're always asking personal questions, they're always they never seem to mind their own business. You might then, because those characteristics are irritating you, that person might very well be a connector. So the way that when you're trying to figure out how to hone in on maybe what somebody else's personality style is, you can sometimes think about the things that irritate you the most about that person, or you understand the least about that person, and that's a clue as to what their main personality style might be. So these were our individual results. One tool to use is to take individual results of a team and look at them all together. So I can say, based on your responses to me, that our class is primarily full of a connector team, then followed by a planner team, then followed by mover, and then followed by thinker. So if I was, say, bringing a new team together and I had given this test to everybody, I would know that I need to find a couple more thinker style people to add to the team. And that I'm good and balanced with the connectors, and I'm pretty balanced with the planners. It's only a difference of one. So when you are studying building high performing teams in one of the other classes that Clemson offers, the stages of group dynamics that they cover, form, storm, norm, perform, and adjourn, when a leader of a team can do a personality assessment on the teams, they can figure out what might help that team the most get through the early stages of team dynamics, the forming and the storming. What kinds of information does that leader need to provide the team? Where do they need to emphasize follow-up? What other players, what other people do need to be brought onto the team to maybe balance that out so that you get a good, diverse way of thinking, of just a way of thinking, a way of behaving, a way to kind of balance out. And this is really important in construction teams because we deal with all kinds of different stakeholder groups on our jobs. You've got owner teams and architectural teams, and you've got inspection teams, you've got all kinds of teams, the trades or the CM or wherever you are in the spectrum of a construction team. And so having balanced teams has a lot of value, one of them being that if your team is balanced with personality and communication styles, you can all help kind of keep each other in check so that you can better communicate with the other stakeholders. So one person might get along really, really well with somebody on the client team, and then one person might not get along with them. So kind of this is a great leadership technique and tool, is to, if you have an opportunity to do it, get personality tests, simple ones. This was only 4 questions, and it's not going to be like completely precise. It gives you a direction, like a compass, to be able to understand how to approach people. And you might miss it the first time or the second time, but it starts to, as you do this more with purpose, you become better at it. So that's what this team looks like. And I wanted to show you, as I poke here down and look down at the stuff, I told you before, I do a workshop where we do personality styles and we do a whole thing. It's very interactive. And these are all the real results of people who have attended my workshops in the last long time, almost 20 years. And as you can see, everybody, just like you, everybody has some of all the colors. There's going to be dominant. Look at this one. This one is really, really, really blue and like teeny tiny thinkers. This test is a bit more involved than the one that you took online. But you can see that as we go through the book, a big important point about this topic is that everybody is a blend. Everybody has all of them. It's just a matter of which one do you have more of, and then how can you regulate your attitudes and your behaviors based on what you know, and then how can you pick it out in other people. I will say that I have never noticed in all of that data that there is a difference in age. There is not a difference in gender. There are not more blue women or connector women than there are connector men. There is not job types. I've done this for groups of business development and marketing people. They versus architects. I did it for an American Institute of Architects, something. The whole room is full of architects. They were evenly blended throughout. I did this at a conference for quality managers in construction. That whole room was blended out. So the takeaway here is that the data actually shows over that whole population set that if you look at the percentages for everything, it's 25%, 25%, 25%, and 25%, with no other demographic or profession or other stratification of the data. So these personality traits are just you see them everywhere, and you can't just look at somebody and figure out what they're most likely like. This is a nice break in our maybe unconscious biases, where we meet someone who looks like, I don't know, anything, fill in the blanks, and then we automatically assume that they're going to think in a way, they're going to want information in a certain way, they're going to process what you say in a certain way. You really can't tell a book by its cover based on our fun stereotypes that we talk about. All right, another little bit of housekeeping here. We've got a homework assignment that I posted yesterday. And this is where we're going to really pull out the book. So I would like it if you would read parts 3, 4, and 5 of the book. And you'll notice that in the parts 3, 4, and 5, I'm skipping over 1 and 2, because in section 1 and 2 in particular, that's really more about you. It's details about the individual styles, like and those are probably the chapters that you've already read. Like, you took your test, and if you're really interested in this stuff, you probably read those chapters already based on your personality test. You may or may not have flipped through the other chapters, but you probably didn't get to the last part of the book. And the last part of the book, those chapters are really focusing on what I think is the tool in this topic. So how to recognize stress behaviors. This is what this whole lecture is going to be about: recognizing stress behaviors, adapting your communication to different team members, and applying personality-based leadership strategies based on what you can figure out. After you do the reading, I'm hoping for a brief reflection in response to the following question. So what is the one thing you can start doing immediately to apply what you've learned about personality lingo in your everyday interactions at home, at work, in your community. And I'm really not particularly interested in summarizing the reading. I'm more interested in getting a bead on what you felt resonated with you, something that you want to apply in everyday life now. How can you take something from that reading, make it your own, and then use it to help you and help the people around you? So I won't get into all of the little additional guidance that's in there. I just wanted to announce that is the homework. The reading will be due, the assignment from the reading will be due Tuesday, July 18th. Okay, and then the other thing from a housekeeping perspective is we talked about how brief this class actually is. 6 weeks just goes away so fast. So we're going to have a midterm next week. I'm going to open it up on Wednesday. Well, I feel like I got the dates wrong on that. Well, it's a Wednesday. I'm going to open it up on Wednesday, and I'm going to keep it open until Friday so that you can fit it into your schedule, whatever works, and take your time doing it. I'm going to leave it with no time on it because this is about your thoughts, not memorization. So what's it going to cover? In Module 1, we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We talked about Dan Pink. This time, we're going to talk about personality lingo. You're going to have those words so memorized by the time we're done. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence, the Johari window, active listening, and all of this looped up into how to create psychological safety. So those are big dots to connect across all of these. I'll go ahead and do some multiple choice questions. I'm not after making any surprises. So if you don't know the answers to those questions, you probably didn't do any of the work. And then we're going to put in an essay question or two, and it will be based on some deeper reflection, and you'll be asked to, in those questions, I don't know how many I'm going to have, you'll be asked to connect multiple models, the different models that we covered to real life situations and how they can inspire you to improve your communication and your leadership skills. So that just thinking, nothing to strain the brain over, but something to really kind of introspection. All right, so let's dive in now to some content. So here we go. Emotional intelligence. I said last time I was going to explain it, so here is the explanation. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and use your emotions, both yourself, your internal things, and then what other people are going through. You have high EQ, emotional quotient. You can measure this. There are tests that you can take, and they're really interesting, kind of like personality tests, but a little bit different. You have a high EQ when you can use your emotional intelligence to for good. Use your powers for good. When you can notice what's going on and when you can bring it out in others. And then you have a low EQ if basically you can't read the room. So the first part of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. It is how well do you know yourself and your own emotions and what they do to you, the impacts of your emotions on you. And then the second part is how well can you regulate them? So can you first recognize what you're going through, your thoughts, your attitudes, your behaviors, your moods? Can you first recognize them? And then secondarily, can you control them? So it's the difference between respond and react. You know, we can't control a whole heck of a lot in life, but we can control how we react. to what's going on around us or what people say to us. So that's the first part of what emotional intelligence is talking about. But that's only 50% of the picture. The other 50% is talking about empathy and recognizing the emotions in others. So can you notice when someone else's impulses or moods or behaviors are going on? Can you empathize with them? Can you kind of feel what's going on with them? And then can you use that recognition of what they're going through to help manage the relationship, manage the interactions? Can you notice when somebody's getting flustered, and then can you calm them down? Can you de-escalate them? And it's about building rapport. And everything that we're going to go through in the personality styles it increases emotional intelligence. So now let's uncover the table here and look at the personality lingo, the personality styles, and get into them. So as you can tell from your homework, there are 4 main personality styles. And if you're when you look at the book, there's a table on page, I gotta find it really fast. Okay, there's a table on page 10, and it's called the approximate comparison of systems. And I do want to point out that there's not one better or worse personality profiling system or personality test, or I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I think that whether you are using, Don Lowry's True Colors or Mary Miscisin's Personality Lingo or Myers-Briggs or Carl Jung or whatever, that this table shows you how they all kind of align. And over hundreds of years since people started thinking about this and documenting what they thought, there's really the four traits. So you can call them whatever you want, but I like this system because it's really easy to talk about, particularly when it was originally written with colors. So let's get into our golds, the planners. So planners crave order. Remember I asked you in the homework what the core value is for each of the personality traits from the that was shown on the website after you did your test. Well, these are the people who they like to be responsible. They want to be responsible. They want to be dependable. They are the people who you can pick it out. Who's showing up early all the time? Who's always super prepared? You have to have 1 pencil, but these kids brought 4 pencils to school. They're the ones you can pick them out because they might be the ones that carry an extra mouse or an extra hard hat or whatever. They like to be super prepared and bring out extra stuff. You can usually pick out a planner because they've got a list. And maybe they have so many lists that they have a list of their lists. So planners are the ones that really like to write things down, and they'll stop a conversation with someone else and be like, oh, wait, hold on, let me make a list. So that's a cue that the person that you're talking to might be a planner. And they're also the ones that will pick up the slack. So they know what the process is, they know what needs to be done, and their main goal is to get that process done. So planners are so good on a team or in a relationship. These are the ones that you want to help organize things. You want them to help plan. Obviously, it's in the word planner. Make them responsible. Planners are the ones that love rules and love making sure that everybody knows what the rules are and that they follow the rules. If you need someone to enforce an agenda or make sure everyone's on time, these are the people that are really detail-oriented. They're really great supervisors because they have a great handle on the whole picture, the whole process, and they keep in mind what that structure needs to be. That's really a great way of using a planner on a team. Accuracy. These are the best proofreaders on the planet. They really, I know who my planner friends are, and I am, when I'm creating something or writing something, they're the ones that I go to for proofreading, and I know who those people are, and I use them because I need them. And fair, they're in a debate or in a conflict, you can go to a planner and ask for their opinion, and they're going to give it to you, and it's going to be pretty fair. So those are a lot of the strengths that planners bring to the table. And those are the things that you can look for as you're trying to identify who the planners are around you. They're the ones that might think if you want something done right, then do it the way it's supposed to do. Planners will think things like, your procrastination is not my emergency. That's a typical kind of planner way of thinking. What do planners look like when they're thriving, when things are going really well for a planner and they're solid? They are the backbone of our teams. They are the backbone of families. They're the ones that really value tradition. They're the ones that we always do Thanksgiving here. We always have this menu at Thanksgiving, and the table's decorated this way. Or we're going to have the family camping trip, and it's going to go like this. And these are the places. And they really, really value tradition. They value it a lot, and they want to be responsible. If you want to disenfranchise or unengage an engaged planner, take away their responsibility. So as a leader, you have to be really cautious of that. And if you want to build up a planner and make them feel more a part, I'm going to go to Maslow, the social needs, belonging. When a planner is given responsibility, that is their sweet spot. They like it. They will always follow through on commitments. They will make detailed plans. They'll set super clear expectations because they've thought it all the way through. Planners are those people in your life that are really loyal. That tradition piece, that also influences, a respect for authority, a respect for very long-term relationships. Because it's sometimes you could look at that if you wanted to as a part of tradition. We've known each other since kindergarten. Never mind that they're a jerk now, but I've known them since kindergarten. It's my tradition to have this person in my life. That might be what a planner thinks. Planners are very service-oriented. They believe in contributing to something bigger than themselves. Well, that should ring a bell with, Dan Pink, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Purpose aligns very well with planners, and they like to do something bigger than themselves. Planners will see what needs to be done, and they will go above and beyond. And they're incredibly dependable, but they need clarity, and they need to know what needs to be done. So think about the people in your life. As I'm going through all of these, you might be jotting down like the names of people that you are reminded of by these characteristics, because that is the power in this. Can you meet someone, and how quickly can you determine what their major personality style is? So let's go look at another one here. So when planners are under stress, so they're not their best selves, maybe they've fallen down on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So how can you start to pick that out? Well, because planners thrive on clarity and consistency, when that's missing, they start to have trouble. And so what stresses them out? So if somebody's saying, I can't trust anyone to do their part, well, that's probably caused because other people aren't following through by what they think the process needs to be. In disorganization or chaos, that's going to stress them out. Unclear expectation or sifting plans. Now, in construction, plans change all the time because things happen. So planners in construction, I think, are a little bit more attuned to change because it's the nature of our work. But as people working with planners, we need to make sure that planners can see that even though the change happened, the change management is still under control. Change is okay for a planner as long as you're managing the change and they can see that. So if they can't see that and it's just all havey-cavey, that can frustrate a planner and start to really stress them out. You can also pick out planners by if they're getting stressed out, and they'll say words like, well, nobody else is doing their job, or why am I always the one that's got to clean it up, or so and so is not meeting a commitment. If those are the kinds of words that the person is using, then they might very well be a planner. Planners hate to be late, and so they don't like it when other people are late, and they'll find it rude and disrespectful if you stroll in for a meeting 1 minute late. These are the people that say early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. Interruptions. Pay attention, because a stressed out planner, if you interrupt a planner who is stressed out, they are likely to snap at you. Being underappreciated is another huge stressor for people who, with this dominant planning trait, they're really going above and beyond. They're working really hard to keep things organized and structured and easy for everybody else. And they need recognition. They need recognition. These people, especially an extroverted planner, these are the ones that love public recognition. Wasted time or resources. If you start hearing somebody repeatedly say this is not efficient, they might be a goal. That's a good indicator that they're a planner. Sorry, I'm trying not to use my color terms, but it's tough for me. And wasted time or resources. So anything. Planners are probably the best recyclers that you know. Wasted lean construction with the 5 wastes. Those people love using that process because it makes sense to them, and they'll get stressed out if a process like that isn't used. So these are all signs that you might be dealing with a planner. Now, when planners are really stressed out, they can behave in some pretty interesting ways. So one of the ways that a planner can behave is say things like, why am I the only one who cares? This is a very lonely thought that's being expressed. Think about it, and then put that in the context of Maslow. If someone is this stressed out and it's truly thinking, why am I the only one who cares? Doesn't that hit on the esteem level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? If they're constantly feeling like that, then they're or not esteem, social. If they're constantly feeling like that, then they might be living in that middle rung, the social tier. What was it? Physiological needs, safety needs, and social needs. So if you've got a planner that's really feeling like this hard, they could be pretty far down there in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If a planner is stressed out, that is where they will act like the worst micromanager ever. They will check up on everybody and check up on themselves too if they're stressed out. A stressed out planner will also insist on doing things their way because obviously their way is the right way. No question about it. Planners are probably the ones that will pipe up and say, we've always done it this way. Why mess it up now? Planners under stress, because under stress, they won't be trusting other people to meet the commitments and do the deliverables, but they know that still has to happen. So what their solution might very well be to quietly take on more and more and more work. And then this causes more and more and more stress until they eventually lash out or have an emotional overflow. Crying or yelling, I believe, is the same thing. They can become very rigid. With even if an idea is a better idea, if a planner is stressed out, they have blinders and they are moving forward to execute that process, and that's what is important to them, and they will become very rigid and very, very stubborn about change. And if somebody makes a mistake when a planner is stressed out, they very well might say something like this: "No excuses. You should have known better." Like, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." They get really cold, I guess, is a way to describe a planner. So I'm hoping that you've been able to pick out maybe one or two people that you know well and go, "Oh, that person is definitely a planner. I don't have to look at test results to know that that person is a planner." So how do we remember this whole class? The reason why we're even talking about this is to look at how we can recognize that someone is stressed out, mental health, right? Psychological safety. If someone is stressed out, they might be very low in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so are they truly feeling safe, psychologically safe? So if we can hone our radar to pick out on when someone is starting to really stress out, then we can adjust how we are talking to them or how we approach them. So this ding, 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 this is emotional intelligence. So what we just covered in under stress for planners is that third level of emotional intelligence. Can you recognize and be empathetic that somebody is under stress? And then that outer circle for emotional intelligence was, how can you help them through it? So here we go. If you think you're dealing with a planner, here are some ways that you can help a planner de-stress or stay in a comfortable zone for them. So when you're talking with someone who's a planner, be specific and be consistent. My daughter is a full-on planner, and if things change and we're not consistent, it really stresses her out. So we always try to be very consistent. And this reduces anxiety about expectations. Why? Because planners need clear expectations. Show appreciation, be very tangible. Planners need to know that they've been seen, that their efforts have been seen, that their efforts are valued and appreciated. When you ask a planner for their opinion, ask them about how they think something should be done. Not necessarily how people are going to feel about it. That's not very interesting to a planner, most planners, unless they're a primary planner and then secondary connector. But when you, and this is like group dynamic stuff, form, storm, norm, perform, and adjourn. When you're working through that stage of group dynamics and you want to get a planner to engage, ask their opinion about how things should be done. Follow through on promises. Breaking a promise to a planner is a surefire way of eroding trust. Respect their traditions and rituals. Planners will feel pretty insulted if someone disrespects what their traditions or rituals are or makes fun of them. And this doesn't have to be like holidays. This could be their nighttime routine. So if your spouse is a planner and they need to go through their 10 steps of doing the dishes, taking a shower, fluffing the pillows, walking around, making sure all the windows and doors are closed, tucking the kids in, and then reading before they go to bed. That's their routine. And you're going to stress them out if you tease them about it, make fun about it, or break that routine. Give advance notice of change. Like I said, planners don't like change, but they can deal with change. So if you know a change is coming, then give them time to prepare and wrap their minds around it. That helps a planner who's stressing out de-stress a little bit. And then planners don't need help figuring out more things to do. Planners need help with taking a break and reducing what they've got going on. That's what planners need. They don't need more to do. They need to take a break so that they can do what they've agreed to do and take it on. So what can you say to a planner to help them stay level? Well, you could say something like, "I see how much you're holding together. Thank you so much. Let's talk through our plan. Maybe we can take the pressure off if we adjust our plan or our approach Those are all kinds of ways that you can start a conversation with a planner that will kind of get them to know that you're listening to them and that you empathize with them. Don't say to a planner, just let it go, or you're being uptight. You say something like that, you're really devaluing what's important to a planner, and that can stress them out. That can shut them down. So those kinds of little phrases there, those are ones to avoid with a planner. So I hope that gives a good overview of planners. I want to close on the specific conversation about planners with this core value, responsibility. The core values of responsibility is the single quickest way to build up a planner. Build up goes along well with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Get them up higher and higher and higher in the pyramid. But if you do the opposite, you take away responsibility, you tell them they were irresponsible, you tell them that the rules don't matter and that they're not responsible for deliverables or anything like that, you can pull them down. So if you think you're dealing with a planner who's stressing out, and they may not be in any kind of a mental health crisis yet, or not yet, it's kind of dangerous because that implies that yet it's going to happen. But if you notice a planner is starting to stress out, find ways to recognize how they've been responsible, and show them how what they bring, order, tradition, dependability to the table, how that's valued. Those are ways to help reel a planner back in. So that was one. So now let's talk about our thinkers here. The thinkers, this is why I prefer the colors, because I feel like the label on the personality style might imply that someone else isn't a thinker, and that is certainly not true. I just rather the non-judgmental greens to saying thinkers, but we'll go with the current literature here. So let's talk about thinkers a bit. So thinkers crave competency. Competency was the thinker's core value. And in conjunction with competency is independence and understanding. And actually, all of these words go hand in hand with what they want internally as well as when they're working in a team. So at personal and intrapersonal and then interpersonal as well. Thinkers are deep thinkers and quiet observers. Not all thinkers are introverts. There are a lot of extroverts who are thinkers. So don't just make assumptions here. Introvert and extrovert is quite different than a personality style. They're observers who challenge assumptions. They seek to improve systems, and they love to ask why. Just love to ask why. Greens are not driven by popularity. A lot of greens are loners. They're not driven by that or tradition. They are motivated by, there's that word again, mastery. So logic and meaningful insight. So when you're dealing with a green and then you start thinking about motivation from Dan Pink, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, the mastery is really important to a green, to a thinker. They're very tenacious. They're very innovative and creative. They're kind of the inventors. They are a wealth of information. They are kind of critical. That's okay. They like to fix things. They like to learn. And you can use this knowledge of this personality trait to really assign tasks well to a thinker. Now, word of caution here is that because thinkers dive really deep into information, it may take a thinker longer to do a task than, say, a planner or certainly a mover, because a thinker is going all the way down. They're going deep. They want to learn everything about it. They want to anticipate all the if-then pieces of the information. And the other thing that thinkers are going to do is when they come up with a solution or a plan, they're really thinking to how is everybody else going to do this thing. So it takes them along. They don't just finish a thing for the finite task. They want to make it so that anybody else doing that task after them can do it the same way with the same information. And that's very much what thinkers do. So they're very powerful people on the team, but they're often misunderstood too. And we'll talk about that more in a bit. So what can you expect from a thinker who is thriving? So someone who's really in their sweet spot and they're really engaged and they're all the cylinders are firing. So they're super analytical. They love to break down complex problems. Other personality styles are very impatient about that. They don't want to get into that level of detail. They'll say, cut to the point. They're very curious. They want to, like I said, they'll ask why, and their questions might seem to be meandering style questions, but really that's because they're collecting so much data in the way that they're thinking. It's not meandering to them. Independent thinkers are really good at working independently. They require very little supervision, and in fact, they do not like to be supervised. With a micromanaging planner combined with a deep in the detail thinker are gonna have problems. Thinkers are very objective. They rely on logic and evidence. Not emotion. They're very visionary. They are the ones that can see patterns and systems and future possibilities. They're good at connecting the dots in all this cloud that we call our current world. They're typically very calm. They don't necessarily overreact. And so I bet you can think about a few people that you know that that might possibly be thinkers. Well, greens. Everybody's a thinker. Most possibly be greens. All right. So what are these people gonna kind of look like under stress? So because greens like intellectual autonomy, oh my goodness, there's another damn pink word there. Stress for a green begins when they feel confined, trapped, mentally, specifically, mentally trapped, disrespected, meaning that if their core value is competence and they are feeling incompetent, or someone is telling them they're incompetent or they're wrong, because a green will typically not make a statement until they've researched it fully. So greens, you have to convince a green that they're wrong about something, because usually they will not have said anything until they were pretty darn sure they were right. So if you question a green's competence, you're gonna nails on a chalkboard, right? So a stressed out green will, they need to be able to think alone. So a stressed out green, even in a meeting, if there's a whole bunch going on, they're most likely not going to volunteer a conclusion or a recommendation right away, like right in the moment, because they're going to want to think about it and make sure that they're correct. In order to do that, the rigid rules and repetitious work are not for a green. Planners are okay with that. They're fine with that. But this quote here is a good one. If a green is saying, I could improve this, but I'm not allowed to, that is a clear sign that you're dealing with a stressed out green. When others have emotional outbursts, that makes them uncomfortable. They don't know. That's just not their thing. Incompetence in others. So remember, they value competency in themselves. So if a green, you keep hearing things like, this is really simple, why can't you get this? Or I shouldn't have to explain this, or any manifestation of something like that, that is a stressed out green. And working with what they view as incompetent is not something that sits well with them. Lack of information is a stressor for a thinker, for a green. And really that quote here, this, how can I make a decision without knowing more? That is something that greens really feel deep into their core. Like, I, you want me to make a decision, but you're not giving me the information, or the information's not available, and I can only give a general idea, but we might be wrong, and I don't want to be responsible for the fallout because I didn't have enough data to deal with it. Interruptions, greens hate it because they are they're thinking hard, and they're digging deep. So interruptions will stress out a green personality as well. So think about those people that you might know that when you walk by their office or by their desk, and they're just like so like, ugh, you get a dirty look. They might be a green. They might be a green. So when greens are stressed out, you might notice that they become overly critical of themselves and of others. I'm such a moron, you're such an idiot, those kinds of things. A green under stress will also they'll become very aloof. When people first meet a green, they might think that the person is really intimidating or arrogant because they're just aloof. They're very composed. When a green is stressed out, or a thinker is stressed out, they might withdraw, or these people love giving the silent treatment. So those are all indicators that you might be dealing with a green. A green really stressed out, analysis to paralysis. You've heard that before. That is a common trait of a stressed out green, that you could think that they're checked out, they're not paying attention. Greens thinkers, their sense of humor is often very, very dry and very sarcastic. Belief that explaining is pointless. This is a real high green who would be responding with this kind of a slant to what they're thinking about. And if they're feeling like everything is flawed, that means that their data is shifting, right? Like, all this data is inaccurate, I can't make a decision. That is a very thinker expression of stress and frustration. And yes, the fear of failure becomes really high in a thinker. They're not really as open to feedback and critique as other personality styles are, because if they said it, they researched it. So if you have someone in your life that you just can't approach or tell them they did anything wrong or whatever, that might be an indicator that that person is a thinking personality. And so there's going to be some tools that we'll go over in a little bit that might help you de-stress that green. Greens don't think rules apply to them because they're always going to find a better way. The rule was created for the masses, not for me. It really stifles their ability to be autonomous. Rules and thinkers are not friends, really. Now, a thinker is really good at developing rules and policies and procedures. They're not so good at following them. So then how do you help and support a green? If you get a green person on a thinker on your team, man, I really don't like that term. When they're on, give them space to think. This prevents them from shutting down and can help them calm down. So really detailed meetings where they're not so great with like the elbow to elbow collaboration because they need more quiet time to focus. Some of the other personality styles, they won't come up with a great idea if they're not in a group. But these greens, they need some time to be off on their own to think things through. Ask them for their opinion on systems, on how everything is interconnected. They feel most valued when they're asked to improve things. So this goes to their inventor side. So that's another way that you could help a green de-stress. Provide logic and rationale. Emotional persuasion will backfire. Greens need to understand the why. They're the ones 5 whys. Why? That's how a thinker green's mind work. You give them one answer, they're going to ask you another why question. You give them that answer, they're going to ask you another why question. I think Ishikawa, the inventor of the fishbone diagram in Six Sigma, all things you may or may not be familiar with, but I think he had to be a very heavy green. He built a whole root cause discovery model on asking why 5 times, 100 times. Greens help them avoid micromanagement. If you're managing a green and things are taking a little longer, the answer is not to micromanage them. The answer is to remind them of the larger objectives. There are other tools, but don't respond to a green by micromanaging them. There, you build trust with a thinker, with a green, by saying things like, can you go and discover why this is happening? Can you go and get more information on this so that we can blah, blah, blah. Honor their need for solitude. Acknowledge their ideas. So even if you can't implement an idea, you've got to show that you're listening. And this goes for all personality styles. But that when they're saying ideas here, they're talking about like innovations. Like, yeah, we could do that. That might work. Explain to me how you see that working out. Those are all good questions to ask a green thinker on your team to help engage them. And then here is, I think, one of the more important things to do for a thinker / green when they're stressing out, and that's encourage progress over perfection. And this does help them reset. So you may recall that my primary is green, which is why I go on and on about this, and I think that this is all really accurate. But I had a boss who said to me when I started a new job, and I was telling him, like, oh my goodness, there's so much to do. I feel like I'm behind the curve. I'd only been there for less than a week, and I wanted to be like the expert in everything when I first got there. And I was like, oh, there's so much to learn and so much to look into. And I was like working myself up into this place. And his name is William DeCamp, and he ex-Marine. And he said, I knew him from a previous job. And he said to me, Laura, this is a marathon, not a race. When Will said that to me, he calmed me down so much. I was like, you know what? Yes, it's a marathon, not a race. And that, to this day, whenever I start stressing out, I think about Will DeCamp on the phone telling me it's a marathon, not a race. So those kinds of things, like if you can resonate with someone because you've picked up on what will resonate with someone, they can take that through the rest of their life. That was 15 years ago, I think. This is the power of paying attention to what's maybe causing stress in someone that's around you and looking for a very pointed way to do it. And I don't know if Will did it on purpose or not. He probably just knew how to do it because he had a very decorated career and he was a great manager and leader. But he sure knew what to say to me that day. So good things to say to a green to keep them open and head up, eyes forward is, I always appreciate the way you think things through. Always appreciate the research that you do. Let me know how you would approach it. Or what another way is, based on what you know or your experience, what could go wrong here? And that's a way to also filter through their ideas with them. Like if you think it's a total idea, then ask a green or a thinker, like, well, what does that look like? What could go wrong? And that will help them see that it's not them that you're disagreeing with. More, it might be the concept, the idea, or there is a flaw in there. And that's just facilitating them thinking it through on their own. That really resonates well with a thinker. And we don't like to hear stop overthinking, just go with your gut. That doesn't work with a green. Nice try. Doesn't work with a green. Okay, so we've done planners and we've done thinkers. So now let's do movers. All right, so who are these guys? So I'm going to mess you up and call them oranges all the time, but oranges are movers. They crave freedom, excitement, and action. Freedom being their core value here. And freedom always with these core values, if you remember nothing else, remember the core values of each of these personality styles, because you can say, okay, am I supporting freedom for this person, or am I not? Am I taking it away? If that's the only thing that you take away from this are the core values for each one, and that you can pause and question how you're either supporting that core value or taking it away, and then do whatever the situation requires, then it's a big win. So movers in our worlds, these are the people who will improvise. They are comfortable taking risks, where a thinker will not take a risk until they've fully vetted the information. They've gone way down. The movers are like, they need a very small amount of information before they're ready to make a decision, and they'll actually get impatient waiting for everybody else to just go. Let's make a decision. Let's go. If we mess up, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. We can go back and make a change and then try it again a different way. Like, that is a mover like temperament. That's their style. And gosh, we need these people, because I tell you, if we were all thinkers and planners on this planet, no, we need the movers. So they thrive in the present moment. They live in the moment. Once it's done, my great-grandmother, there's a story about my great-grandmother who was driving a car. A policeman was following her for a really long time. She finally stops for whatever reason. The cop tells her, hey, I've been following you with my lights on for forever. Didn't you see me? And she said, no, you're behind me. Nothing matters behind me. I'm going forward. That's kind of like movers. They need challenges. Give them a challenge. They'll find a way through it. They'll go up it, over it, around it, through it, under it. They will find a way. Movers will find a way, and they'll do it relatively quickly. These people learn by doing. Obviously they can read, and they can think things through, but they need a very little bit of information, and then they want to get right into it and do it. They lead with energy. They have very little tolerance for boredom, bureaucracy, red tape. Those things just get in their way. So that's how you can start kind of picking out a mover. Movers they're great comedians. They're wonderful negotiators. Like, that's one of their strengths. Y'all probably know the movers / oranges in your life, because they're the ones that come up with the really cool ideas for things to do together. They like to become experts on tools and things that require, like, getting into it. They crave attention. Usually you get an extroverted mover and you got the life of the party. They like tasks that require risk and chance. Good gamblers, these guys. They're great troubleshooters, and they're the ones that bring life to a party. They're the ones who will say, well, we'll just figure it out as we go. So I wonder how many movers you were thinking about as I was describing what movers typically look like. So they bring, when you put them on a team, they are the ones that bring courage and flexibility and spontaneity to the team. They will rush in. They're great in a crisis. Really, really great in a crisis. They're super energetic. They're highly adaptable. They're the ones that you need to allow to play with things. They will take risks that other people will avoid. They're incredibly resourceful, and they're playful. Movers are awesome. Under stress, what stresses out a mover is being micromanaged. You notice so far everybody hates being micromanaged. Movers are risk takers. They want to do things their way. They are the ones, unlike a planner who wants to do it the right way, a mover doesn't care how other people do things. These are the ones that you say, okay, get the football across the field. And they're like, all right. If you tell them how to get the football across the field, they don't want to do it. But if all you tell them is, I need that football across the field, then they're happy to do that and they'll find any way to do it. A planner, on the other hand, you say get the football across the field, and they might ask how they're supposed to do that. Not that they can't figure it out on their own, but they're going to ask to make sure that is there a way that it's supposed to be done or not supposed to be done. They'll make one up if they need to. But a mover doesn't want to be told how to do it at all. They just want to know what the objective is, and then they want you to get out of their way. Excessive rules or structure stresses out movers. My wings are clipped. That is a sentiment that you might hear from movers. The poor little kids who are movers, it's having to sit still in a classroom for hours on end. I always feel so sorry for them. Or in meetings, these are the ones who are really people who are fidgety. If you have a lot of movers in a room, you really need to break more frequently, move around, pass around like fidget toys, those kinds of things. These are very kinesthetic learners. So kinesthetic learners means that they learn by doing. They have to touch it and feel it. They don't like routine. They don't like repetition. They don't like indecisiveness. They don't like being slowed down. They don't like any of that stuff. If they're working for a boss that does any of that stuff, it will start to stress them out. And they need fun. They need movement. They need excitement. They love competition. So these are all things that can help you figure out if you're potentially working with a mover. And these are the things that will stress them out. So if you're working with someone or your kids or your spouse or whatever are showing signs of stress, then sit back, look and see, have you imposed excessive rules on that person? Are you micromanaging them? Like, be honest, you might be, and then you're causing the stress. A stressed out mover may start making jokes that are inappropriate. They may become rebellious. They may break rules or push back. They'll joke to avoid discomfort. They'll start moving around. They'll get louder and louder and more dramatic. They'll just walk away. A mover has no problems just walking away. A planner might stay through to the bitter end and miserable, where a mover is more likely to just, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. And then movers may be very charming to get out of being accountable or held responsible for something. That's when they'll turn on the charm. Y'all know these people, they do it. And pushing limits. Yes. All right. So how do you support or de-stress an orange? Well, you got to allow choice and autonomy for an orange. It re-engages their sense of control when they get to choose what they're doing. And this, everybody knows this now because of pink. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Oranges, movers really need that autonomy. It's super important to them. Use humor and positivity to break the tension. They really appreciate that. Joke with them. Keep things fast-paced and hands-on. Don't let them get bored. Celebrate all the small wins. They do like a lot of recognition, and you got to celebrate those small wins. Give physical outlets. So go take them for a walk. Go walk the job site with them. If you've got a lot to discuss, move with a mover. Take them and walk them around, and that will help them their brains to work. And then you got to pick your battles with movers. Like, set clear goals, or rules, but keep them minimal. Right? Be very judicious with what rules you enforce on a group of movers. So, telling a mover you've got great instincts and how would you tackle this, that is a real win for dealing with movers. Versus if you tell them sit still because that's the rule, or don't be so dramatic. Those are ways of disengaging movers. Okay, one more, connectors. All right. So these are the blues in my old style vernacular. These people, their core value is connection, harmony, authenticity. They are the ones that bring empathy. They remind us. They're the ones that we might ask a green, what could possibly go wrong here? We might ask a planner what processes we should employ. We might ask a mover, how quickly can we get this done? We would ask a blue, a connector, how do you think people will feel about this? This is a really, really important balancing member of the team. Without the connectors, we would all be a bunch of robots, I guess is a very extreme way of saying it. The blues are the ones that bridge the gaps between people. They are the glue that binds. They are the ones that are so important to strengthening a team and keeping us balanced and showing empathy, because this is their natural place. Other people can do it, yeah, sure, but this is their natural, most comfortable place. So blues typically are really good at training people. They're really good at being a confidant. Mentors, blues are great mentors. Connectors are great mentors. They will see something going on and they will be thinking about how it affects people. And they're full of creative ideas, and they love they they just love talking about stuff and working it out and hearing what everybody's thoughts are on it. So these are all ways that you might be able to pick out a blue. Thinking about how they behave when they're thriving. So connectors are incredibly empathetic. They are almost empathic, not just empathetic. They're almost empathic. They can sense what other people are feeling. They don't need any words. They'll pick up on the smallest body language clue and go with that. They're very caring. These are the ones, if you want to know who the blues are that you know, who's giving out birthday cards and bringing cake to the office. Those are the blues. Those are the connectors. They're incredibly loyal, and they're really committed to individuals and causes that they believe in. Those big social causes. That's big for connectors. They are the peacemakers. You know, in family dynamics, there's almost always a peacemaker somewhere in there, and usually it's the middle child. That person might very well be a blue. They're known, connectors are often the peacemakers in the family. They're intuitive. They will not make a decision just on cold hard facts. They will always make a decision thinking about how it impacts the people around. And they're very expressive. These blues, they talk a lot, and they want to share stories and feelings, and if they love it, then other people need to love it too. Okay, so what happens to these connectors when they're under stress? Well, if there's conflict going on or rejection, blues often internalize it. Connectors often internalize it. And rather than think, what did that person do? You're going to hear things like, what did I do wrong? They will, if a group of people is going out to lunch and they happen to not be invited, they might think they're being excluded. I often tell my kids there's a difference between being not included and being excluded. Excluded is on purpose, and it just so happens you're not included in everything because everybody can't go to everything, and it's not, an open table every single time. So just because you didn't get an invitation doesn't mean that you were excluded. It just means you weren't included. Blues have a really hard time understanding this. They're likely to feel left out if that happens, and that's Maslow, baby. That is the social needs. That if they feel unappreciated, kind of, I'm not appreciated. When they feel like people are being insincere with them, they'll pick it up very fast. If you're just kind of pandering to them, to shut them up, they'll recognize that insincerity pretty quickly. and it will start stressing them out. They'll wonder what they did wrong. They wonder how they hurt your feelings. Being really harsh or with cold logic, this is where greens or thinkers, and actually all three of them, movers, thinkers, and planners, need to be aware when dealing with a blue, because if you just rattle off a bunch of facts, or you rattle off this is how it needs to be done, or the mover says, oh, we're doing it this way and that's it, that can stress out a connector quite a deal, quite a lot. If they're not seeing, if blues are not seeing the why things are being done for the bigger picture for others, then they will, that lack of emotional connection will begin to stress them out as well. So again, be paying attention to the people that you know or have interacted with that might clue you in to whether or not you're dealing with a blue, a connector. Oh, I lost my mouse. So connectors, when they are stressed out, you'll notice that maybe they're yelling, they're screaming, they're crying, whereas remember a thinker, a green, will withdraw, or a planner, a gold, will become like really rigid and stubborn, or a mover, the oranges, they might become really rebellious. So that's how you can see and start to pick out what personality style people are, is how they're responding under stress. Another thing that you might notice in people who are connectors is they'll start looking depressed, like, that's kind of how blues will act under stress. They'll become, whereas a blue or a connector, they're usually the ones that are like, hi, good morning, welcome to the team, how was your weekend, all of that stuff. When a connector is under stress, they will become pretty quiet and withdrawn. And so the only way you would be able to pick this out is if you interact with the person on a regular basis, because you would be able to tell a difference. Like a thinker, this is kind of how normally they are, kind of potentially withdrawn. That doesn't mean a thinker is stressed out at all. It just means that they're thinking. But a blue, a connector who's normally effervescent, if they start to withdraw, that is a clear sign that something is wrong. They might misbehave to get attention, whereas a mover is rebellious. A connector might start misbehaving so that they can get attention. This one here, I always like to pause on this one because it kind of sets people back, especially blues, because they'll feel insulted. Lying, I'm not a liar. This isn't really saying that connectors are liars when they're under stress. What this is really talking about is, because they're so concerned with making everyone happy, that if they notice that someone is not happy, they're seeking to make them happy. And so they might say one thing to one person because they think that's what that person wants or needs to hear in that moment. And then they might turn around and say the exact opposite thing to someone else because that's what that person needs to hear in the moment. So this is all in an effort to keep the peace, to keep people talking, to be that peacemaker. And so sometimes you're saying different things to different people because of that. It's not like you're a liar. The connectors are trying to resonate with each person. They'll slowly meander to getting to what the objective is of the conversation, but they're going to do it in different ways with different people. Whereas someone who's solidly a planner or solidly a thinker, they're not really going to meander like that. Connectors will meander a little bit more. Someone who you notice fantasizes or daydreams a lot, that could be a connector under stress. And then becoming passive resistant is another way that connectors they'll say okay and then not do anything that you told them to do. Or well, I think that's pretty clear. What being passive resistant means that they just choose not to participate or cooperate, even if they know you want them to do it or you've told them to do it. Even if they said they were going to do it, they'll find every way possible not to do it. And that's a part of a connector being stressed out. So how do you support a connector who is under stress? Be super sincere when you're showing appreciation. They need to feel emotionally validated. You got to be really sincere with dealing with blues. Um, create space for making those one-on-one interactions. Walk by their work area, call them up, drop them a text, drop them an instant message, check in on them. Build places for there to be connected. Use gentle language. This isn't coddling people. This is just not being blunt, like super blunt. You want to, like, when you address an email to someone that you know is blue, you say hello, say please in the email, say thank you in the email. The other three personality styles are usually, thinkers don't even stop to think about it because they're just going for the data. But planners and movers are so doing what they're doing that they sometimes don't take the time to they started an email mid-thought, they're going clackety clackety clack, fire it off, move on to the next thing. And a blue will get an email, a connector will get an email that just goes right exactly to the point without any kind of opening or thank you or please or that was great. And they'll be like, oof, well, that's blunt. That, like, what did I do wrong? So use gentle language. That's what that means. Acknowledge feelings, not fact. This is how you build trust and psychological safety with a connector, is to recognize that people have feelings and that we have to pay attention to those just as much and sometimes more so than the nuts and bolts of what's going on. Include them in decisions. This kind of goes back to the whole, are you excluded or are you just happen to not be included? If big decisions are being done and you've got blues that are in management positions and they weren't there or they weren't sitting at the table, they take that very personally. So try to find ways to include them in the discussion, in the decision, if you have, and in a group, right? Not necessarily just one-on-one, or tell them what was done. You want them to be able to participate in those group conversations and the collaboration. They might feel ostracized if not. And then set boundaries kindly, right? Like, this needs to prevent them from overextending themselves. Like, connectors have a hard time saying no. They have a very hard time saying no, whereas some of the other personality styles don't. And it kind of hurts them when they have to say no. So help them learn how to say no. It's okay to say no. It's okay to not take on another task. Connectors need that kind of coaching. And then encourage emotional rest. They give so much of themselves. They really don't do a good job of stopping and taking care of themselves first. So things to say to a blue might be, your care for others is seen and valued, but how are you doing, right? Versus, please don't say to a connector, stop being so sensitive. That's the same thing as saying, stop being you, or it's not a big deal, or just be more objective. Those kinds of things go against the grain. So, and you can tell that, we all say, and we normally, when we're conversing with people or dealing with someone or we're having a critical conversation, we're more responding from the way we're comfortable responding. And the whole point of this kind of conversation is to recognize that there are vastly different things that are important to other people. And how can you identify what might be important to that person if you don't know them so well? And then adjust how you're talking to them, how you're when we get into de-escalation and we're talking about like disorders and all of that. If you approach a thinker the same way you would approach a connector because you're a connector, that's not necessarily going to help that person de-escalate. Everything that I've shown you so far, these are all techniques for de-escalation. Think about this. If you have a client who is a connector and you need to do a change order and go and talk to them. If you just walk into that client's office and slap down a ream of paper this thick full of details because you're a thinker, and you throw that down there and you say, okay, here's the solution, blah, blah, thought it through, there we go. And you're dealing with a connector, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to you at all. You're going to have to work really hard to get their mind open to listen to you because you've just insulted them. You didn't ask about their day. You didn't ask about their kids. You didn't ask how things were going. You didn't show any kind of care or concern for them as a person. And these are the like the little superpowers that you can start to employ that to make yourself more emotionally intelligent. If you're a connector and you go in and you start talking to a mover about this whole huge story about how your family went on vacation for the week, and you're not reading the room that other person who happens to be a mover is ready to get on with business, they're not going to take you seriously. And they're not going to listen to you really well. You've already used up your word quota with that mover before you've even gotten to the business at hand. So these are all ways of like paying more attention and then adjusting so that you're communicating more effectively and efficiently and faster. So those were the main personality styles. How to recognize them, how to maybe use their stressors to recognize what kind of personality style they are, and then also to maybe adjust a little bit to de-escalate. It's important to, I like this. This came from an article that Mary Miscisin wrote after her first book was published, and was top 5 communication mistakes. And I think that this is great, not only from a managing of yourself perspective, like what communication mistakes might I make, but then also it can help you identify the personality style of somebody that you are working with because they do these things. So this whole connectors might take too long to get to the point, over apologizing. Oh my goodness, I have 2 kids. One is a connector and one is a planner. And I'll tell you, my connector apologizes for everything that the whole world did. And so it's very clear that he is a connector. Whereas my planner child, if anything is off a little bit, there's a lot of blame going on to other people. And she does get very stuck on specifics. Let's see, what else? I don't want to read all of these off because you can see them and they're in the notes. Movers, ready, fire, aim. That is a unique part about mover communication style. They're ready to go. Bulldozing. They just want to move in and get stuff done, and they are not prone to pausing and waiting to see what the planner, the connector, and the thinker have to bring to the conversation. They make decisions very quickly. Let's see, what other communication mistakes? Data dumping and data diving. This is a common mistake. I have had to teach myself not to do this, is just coming to the table with so much data that no one else can get through it. You might be able to pick out a planner by, are they showing them complaining a lot and that woe is me. So these are all communication mistakes. Now, I want to talk about perceptions. This is another tool that was developed by a team of psychologists, and it's called the Johari window. And you may or may not have seen this before, but this is really interesting. This is about how we perceive things. And one of the things I like to say is, like, how possession is 9/10 of the law, while perception is 9/10 of reality. So in your notes, there is a link to a YouTube video that I think does an excellent job of describing this. And so I'm just going to give a few little highlights here. So the Johari window if I could get there, talks about 2 axes. Yourself, what you can see, what's open to you, and then what others can see. And so this intersection of these two axes give you 4 quadrants. So in each quadrant, there is where your perception lives. So one quadrant is called the arena. It's the open area. This indicates what you and others see. This is what's known by you and by others. This is how you behave. These are your skills. These are the facts that you openly share. And the larger you can make this area, meaning the more you've shared openly with other people, the more this area is. And this build, by having a large open arena area, you can build more trust and have honest communication. So in the next quadrant, we've got the blind spot. This is what others see in you, but you cannot see. This is kind of known by others, but not by self. And this includes your unconscious habits or your traits. Imagine, like we were just talking about, communication mistakes that personality styles, and we mentioned bulldozing by a mover. Well, you can bet that everyone else in the room notices when somebody just plows right over everybody else in the conversation, but that mover might not recognize that they're doing that. That's a blind spot for them. They might not know that they're doing that. That's why something like seeing a list of communication mistakes is so important, because it tells you what you might not be seeing and other people are recognizing. This is all, building emotional intelligence. And when you have a really large blind spot, that means that you're less and less likely to be able to accept feedback, like critiques. Even the best structured, well-meaningful critiques you might not be able to take, because your blind spot is so huge. You just can't recognize that you're doing or not doing something. A third quadrant here is really talking about this hidden area. And this is this is the facade. It's known to you, but not to others. It's like a mask you employ. You're hiding things behind this facade. These could be fears. These could be secrets. These are the things that people will pick up on and they're not telling me everything, or they're holding something back. The more you share with others, the larger and larger, or the smaller and smaller, actually, this is wrong, the space becomes, which the smaller the hidden area, the more trust that you have and the more transparent communication. And then the fourth quadrant in the Johari window is the unknown, and it's unknown to both you and to others. And so this is really untapped potential. This could be hidden trauma also, but the unknown area gets smaller and smaller when you're interacting with people and you have shared experiences together, or reflections, or therapy. And so this Johari window is, let me go back to so this Johari window is a way to say, to talk about how perception, everyone can see it, only others see it, and I can't see it in me. The facade is like, I know that something is there, but I'm hiding it from everybody else. And then the known and the unknown to all. This whole Johari window is such a great way of thinking about relationships and communication. And the more you can be open and build this arena so that it's larger, the more trust and open communication you have. Okay, now how does this align with personality styles? So I want to cover this a little bit, and then we're almost wrapping up here. I know this is a lot of information all at once. So connectors. Connectors will see themselves as caring and romantic and self-expressive and spiritual, but others might see them as overly sensitive or mushy or a drama hound or unrealistic and naive or wishy-washy, manipulative, nosy. So if you're a connector, The value in seeing something like this is that when you're in your best self and the least stressed, you might be coming off as you expect it to be. When you're stressed out, you might actually be portraying these other sides that people will perceive. I guarantee you that if you're working with someone who is stressed out themselves, they could be seeing your behavior as in a completely different way than you see your behavior. So connectors, these are things to look out for when you're dealing with someone else, when you're going back to the emotional intelligence statements, right? How well do you recognize your attitudes and behaviors, and then how well do you control them? These are questions to ask yourself, are you thinking that you're being self-expressive, but you've gone over the top and now you're a drama hound to everybody else? Or planners, you think you're showing commitment, but others may see that as stubborn. You may think you're being organized. Others may see that as being a neat freak. I see this with planners all the time. They are convinced they know what's best. And then if that goes too far in the spectrum, then other people just see them as self-righteous and holier than thou or judgmental. Movers, here's one. Y'all think you're really easygoing and that's super cool, but other people might really see that as irresponsible. Or you think you're shooting straight from the hip and being really straightforward. Well, other people can see that as rude. Productive freedom. I'm just getting the work done, man. But you know what? To other people, they could take that as ignoring the rules. Let's see what else. Oh, I love this one. So many people think it's so great to multitask, but really others can perceive that as being easily distracted. Let's see. Thinkers. Oh, yes. We think we're knowledgeable and our knowledge is very valuable, but other people might see us as being an intellectual snob or condescending, or a nerd or a geek. We think we're coming off as independent, but other people might see that as being antisocial or unapproachable. So I think that this, and in the book they have a lot more detail on things like this, but I think seeing it like, wow, I think I'm being really nice to everybody and building relationships, and yet that can come off as naive. I'm not saying it always does come off in these ways, but when we look at perception and managing perception, is where are we really in what we think we're portraying? This is the Johari tie, right? We think we're portraying one thing, and yet the reality is we might be portraying something else. And then if we're under stress or we're dealing with someone under stress, then all of these things can be exaggerated to the point that they're just not productive. So I want to give a few more connections, examples here of how all of this, I've talked about a lot of stuff, but how all of this can tie and manifest itself in real life. So let's imagine a scenario where a morning huddle is running super long. People are standing around listening, but there's no clear action in sight. If you were a mover, you might notice that if you're like at the point of stress out about this, you might notice, okay, I'm just frustrated. Yeah, I'm rolling my eyes. I'm ready to leave early. You might be thinking this or talking to the person next to you. This is such a waste of time. I could have finished half a day's work by now. That's kind of like the escalated level. The early warning sign of a mover in a situation like this is, are you starting to fidget? Are you starting to joke? Are you starting to look at how you can distract other people because you're bored and you're waiting for it to be over soon? Or if you're in kind of your best self, are you listening to get what you need to safely proceed and get those objectives done? And then you're like, okay, I'm ready. Let's wrap it up and get going. But it's positive. So those are ways that a mover might notice in a meeting that's running long. Well, what might the manager or leader or peer with empathy and emotional intelligence notice as well for this person? Well, if they notice that the person is in like that red zone, the person's visibly frustrated, they're interrupting, they're being sarcastic, they're making stupid jokes, they're getting more and more defiant, and the best advice in that situation, if you're trying to help that mover, is avoid singling them out and stay calm. And then you could ask a question like this, or make a suggestion like this, like, so hey, when we're done here, want to lead the setup. Lead the setup. That is an activity-based action that they can look forward to, and that can be a way to just help someone pivot from being bored and wasting time to like, oh, okay, there's something I can dig into very quickly after this, and that helps them look forward to. If you're noticing someone becoming very restless and you think they're a mover in orange, you could say something like, I know this isn't your thing, we're almost done. Do you want first crack at the demo? Well, again, you're recognizing their feelings. They're bored, they're restless, they won't be doing anything else. And then you're helping pivot them to something that they can do. That's a way to de-escalate a situation like that for a mover. And to keep a mover engaged in a long meeting, you want to keep them active and visible. So catch people doing stuff right? Appreciate your energy today. Your hustle gets the crew going. That recognizes and affirms what you value out of them. That's their energy. And then the impact that characteristics brings to the table. Your hustle gets the crew going. It's a great way of engaging someone who is a mover style personality. Let's do another one. Let's do a thinker. So if a briefing is vague and disorganized, people are tossing out ideas, changing directions mid-sentence, there's no clear rationale for what's happening. Well, a super stressed out thinker, or one that's moved into stressed out, could, how do you look for these internal triggers? This is the internal side of emotional intelligence. Are you zoning out? Are you withdrawing? Are you judging how logical and stupid everybody is, or this all sounds? Is your self-talk kind of like, no one here knows what they're doing, and this plan is nonsense? Those kinds of thoughts, that is the low level of emotional intelligence. That's recognizing your thoughts and emotions. And you better be careful, because you might not be able to control your reaction at that point. A warning sign might be if you're starting to sit back and your arms are crossed, or wanting to go off and do it your own way. You're no longer listening to anybody else. You're just waiting to get out of there to think about it yourself. Your self-talk might be like, this isn't adding up. Maybe I'll just keep quiet and fix it later. That you're disengaging at that point. So can you pull yourself back and put yourself in a stronger state of mind? This is using EQ again, emotional intelligence again. And are you using your insight to make a plan better without needing it to be perfect? All right, this isn't ideal, but I can work with it. Let's fix the parts that matter. That's a thinker whose mind is open, or a green whose mind is open to what's going on. Those are a really good sign. If you're a leader or a coworker or a peer, how might you use your emotional intelligence to recognize and then manage, help someone pull back? So if you notice someone who you think might be green, why do you think they're green? They're getting quiet, they're checking out, they're being kind of cutting or sarcastic or critical. And there's a great rule of conduct for meetings that says, criticize ideas, not people. Greens under stress will criticize people. So you might be able to pull them back and de-escalate what's going on by asking that green person, or the thinker person, can you help us think through the most efficient way to approach this? That could help pull that person back from the unhealthy, stressed out way of thinking. Here's another one, a warning sign. If a green starts looking bored and you want to re-engage them, you can say to them, like, you're good at catching gaps. What are we missing here? I will often say to people, okay, poke holes in this plan. And then a way to keep someone at the table is, thanks for saying that issue early. Your clarity helps everyone. Those are all ways to reinforce. And again, think Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are showing that they belong, they bring value to the table. That's the social part, right? And then esteem, the esteem needs. All of these questions are building esteem. They're well, you don't build people's esteem. People build their own esteem, but they're helping you reinforce that esteem without tearing it down. You're building an environment where people can be motivated. That's what you're doing with these kinds of thoughts and questions. Let's try another one here with connectors. So, internally, regulating your own self. Are you taking what's being said? So the crew lead barked orders and corrections. No time was given for context or feedback. So are you taking that personally? Do you feel hurt by that? Do you feel unappreciated or shut down? Are you thinking, no one respects me, no one cares what's right, only what's messed up? Well, your emotions are boiling a little bit. An early warning sign might be, do you find yourself apologizing? The crew leader barked orders and corrections. You weren't even there that day, but you're apologizing for everybody else, huh? You might be thinking something feels off, or maybe I messed up. These are all warning signs. So pay attention to what's going on in your mind, how you're perceiving. Perception, 9/10 of reality, right? Are you offering support without losing your boundaries? Are you feeling connected but not responsible for others' emotions? We are not responsible for everybody else's emotions. Connectors, blues, right? Is your self-talk like, we're in sync and we've got each other's backs? That's great. That's recognizing that you're in a solid frame of mind. So working with a connector when a crew lead is barking orders and corrections. Well, if you know someone is a connector or a blue person, you know that they may become emotionally overwhelmed. If you observe, or you're that crew leader and you see someone, I don't know, tearing up or yelling or whatever, then you could step back, take a breath, step back and say to that connector, I didn't mean to come off so harsh. Can we talk for a second? That affirms the people side, and then it builds a space to build that one-on-one connection. That's an example of how to do it. What if you notice a connector trying to stay engaged, but you can tell they're kind of unsettled, or they're becoming anxious, or they're becoming overly accommodating? Coffee, tea, milk, can I fill that up for you? They're looking for something to do to resonate with people. They're not really all that comfortable, potentially. So tell that person, you're a big part of this crew. What do you think we need to do here? What do you think people need here? Another way to help regulate a connector and kind of keep them in a level place is to say something like, I appreciate the way you keep the crew communicating. It makes a big difference. Those are really affirming ways of talking to a connector. Okay. And then one more example to round things out and keep them even. Here's an example. The schedule has changed. So materials were delayed. The crew was reassigned to a task that wasn't on the original schedule. So we all know that this could stress out a planner. So are you feeling out of control if you're the planner in this situation? Maybe you spent a ton of time working on that original plan and now you're insulted because, we're not following the plan. Everybody else didn't do their job. So now you feel like you've wasted your time. No one respects the plan and this is chaos. That is a time when you might need a trigger that lets you know that you need to pay more attention to what's going on internally, so you are responding, not reacting. Maybe tension is building and you notice you're getting stubborn or critical or thinking this isn't how we do things. That should be an internal warning sign to you that you need to respond, not react, with purpose, on purpose response. Maybe you recenter by making a new plan or finding a way to change a way to change supports other parts of the schedule. That's a very forward-thinking, open-minded approach for a planner. And it's okay. It's not ideal, but I'll organize what we've got. That's a very well controlled in the moment planner. Now, if you're observing a planner or you're working with a planner and you start to notice that they're getting bossy or snappy, maybe something you would say in this conversation is, that's totally fair, dude. This change threw us all. Can I help you map out the new order of things? That you can see how you're recognizing that emotion in the person, and then you're using your knowledge of their personality style to get to a path forward that's in their comfort zone. It has nothing to do with your comfort zone. If you're a leader, you're trying to pull these things together. You've recognized how they felt, and you're looking for a path forward in their comfort zone. Here's another one. You're right to want order. Let's figure out the best next step together. Again, you're recognizing that you empathize with what's important to them, what they value, the planners, right? And then using, again, what they value to figure out what to do together, where their sweet spot, you're putting them in their sweet spot. And then another thing you might say is, I appreciate how you keep things on track. It really helps the team stay grounded. That is a way of affirming and recognizing the contributions of a planner. All right. So one of the other things that we want to talk about in this module is listening. So we've talked emotional intelligence, we've talked personality lingo to death. Now let's do listening. So listening is so important, and everything that I went through with what is the person thinking, feeling, what are you observing, all of those things that we covered in personality lingo, those are examples of active listening. So let's just, I'm not going to beat this one to death, but I do want to go through what steps of active listening are. So here we go. Active listening begins with hearing, followed very closely by understanding, then reflection, then a response. Now, take note. 3 of those 4 steps did not involve our mouth. If our lips are moving, we're not listening to understand or reflecting on what the person says so that we can craft a good response. Active listening involves way less talking than it does thinking. And when we talk about then behaviors for active listening, have a check at this. So we've got maintain eye contact, right? Be intent, not intense. Focus, this multitasking thing. So those of you movers out there, be really careful, because if you are really trying to listen to someone, you have to put aside your inclinations to multitask. It tells other people that you're not listening. Okay, silence. Let them speak fully. Connectors have a problem with this sometimes because they've got a lot of words to say. So connectors, kind of calm down. Be less mouth moving and more ears listening. Pause before you speak. Movers, planners, thinkers, you need to chill and pause a little bit before you think, and don't assume that you know what the person is going to say. You think you're that smart to know it's going to come out of their mouth, but you're not. Okay? Clarify, ask questions neutrally. Try really hard to not put a slant onto your question, like, do you really want to go to dinner there tonight? Versus, would you really like to go to dinner there tonight? One is asking neutrally, the other is not, right? Reflection. Repeat to confirm. So when someone says something, you can say things like, okay, so what I'm hearing from you is this. How I understand what you said is this. Those are all signs to people that you are listening to them. And when we talk about, in all the personality styles, everybody wants to be recognized for their contribution. That is something that goes through all personality styles. Everyone wants to be valued for their part of the contribution. Think to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, psychological safety, or physiological needs, safety needs, social needs, right? And esteem needs. When you pause, reflect, and repeat to confirm, you have just told that person that they belong in this conversation with you and that you value what it is that they're saying. Simple things like that go a really, really long way. And feeling valued is a core need of everybody. Body language, observe and regulate. I went through a whole bunch of examples of how people might, like, movers fidget, or sitting with your arms crossed, or getting like really dramatic and all of that stuff. Watching for body language is listening, totally listening. And then tone. When you're listening to someone, try to stay calm. If you go crazy, you're no longer listening, and now you're putting the person on defense. And now where's that conversation going to go? Caring. You've got to be sincere as much as you can. That helps people continue talking, right? That's what builds trust. That's what keeps trust. Once built, trust can fall down very, very quickly. And so if you're not calm or caring or in command of what it is that you're saying, if you are reacting, not responding, then you can erode trust, and you can imagine, if we're talking about psychologically safe environments, imagine the converse of all of these. Imagine that someone's never looking at you, or always multitasking, or always interrupts you, or never pauses for clarification, never shows you that they have understood by reflecting what they've said to you. Their body language, you can't predict what's going on with them. And maybe their tone is always like, la, 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 like a crazy person. I guess I shouldn't have used that word. You can see how, if you approach your communications and you listen actively with these techniques, that this can build a psychologically safe environment, because the opposite of each one would cause a very uncomfortable environment. Something to think about. Oh, and we already did all of those examples. So I hope that this whole conversation and lecture has given you several new tools that you can use in real life, that you can start practicing. Don't forget, as with any tool, the more you sharpen it and practice using it, the better it is. I hope that you can see how all of this ties. Maslow, motivation, emotional intelligence, personality styles, and active listening, that all of these are tools that go together to build environments in which people can feel hopefully psychologically safe, where they can feel motivated, where we don't do harm, right? Do no harm. People, and we're going to see when we talk about depression and personality disorders, I mean, we can't control all of that, but we can certainly not spark it. We can help keep things regulated, so that constant stress and constant feeling of devaluation and all of those things that we talked about don't lead to a more serious condition. Okay, so on that note, I am going to end this, and I just want to make sure that y'all notice the announcements for the exam, and that you notice the announcement for the homework. So thank you, and have a great day.